Good evening, everyone. Try that again. Thank you. Vic, do you have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Wilde.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or any other disclosable interest for anything on this evening's agenda? As a no, thank you. Could we have confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting, which is on the 26th of November? Could I ask for a proposer? Thank you, Dean. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Jeremy. And could I have confirmation that everybody agrees with those minutes? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, on to Chairman's announcements. We've got quite a long agenda this evening, so we'll keep these brief. I hope everyone had a great Christmas, which obviously seems quite a long time ago now, and all the best to everybody for 2025. I genuinely hope that everyone who's part of Malvern Hills District Council, both members and officers, have a great, healthy and very successful 2025. I'd like firstly to start by paying tribute to Councillor Nick Houghton, who I know was known by many district councillors and sadly passed away prior to Christmas. I'd like to put on record this council's commiserations to Nick's family and to thank him for his hard work across Malvern Town. Last Friday, many of you will be aware that I left Brecon at 10 a.m. and walked to Worcestershire Beacon, arriving 26 hours later. The 66-mile walk was pretty tough. We started in a storm, spent most of the time in the dark. We were diverted by broken bridges and flooded lanes, but made it raising funds for my charity of the year, Bonterre. The final figure to Bonterre is still going up, but I wanted to thank my fellow walkers, and in particular one of the officers, Chris Lewis Farley, who walked the entire distance with me. Also Beverly and the support team who were there in Hay-on-Wye as we entered Hereford, in Ledbury, and finally at the top of the beacon. A big thank you to Mike Stringer of Bonterre too, who also supported us. It's a great corporation, great charity, and they do some great work. Finally, I did say I'd keep this brief. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate Councillor Natalie McVeigh on receiving the prestigious Clarence Barrett Award from the LGA. This is their highest accolade, awarded to independent group members who go above and beyond in making a significant impact within local government and their communities. Natalie was nominated for her outstanding achievements in the local community, shown through her dedication to causes such as youth and veteran provision, women's equality, and homelessness. For example, Natalie's commitment saw her play a key role in establishing the first District Council-led Poverty Truth Commission. In addition, Natalie is actively lobbying for cold weather payment to be set at 2 degrees instead of 0 for emergency overnight accommodation to be available and publicised in every town and village, and for central government funding to provide suitable housing for rough sleepers and those at risk of homelessness. Natalie is a dedicated and compassionate councillor who works tirelessly for our community. So please join me in congratulating Natalie on this well-deserved recognition of her service. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Natalie. On to public participation. We have a number of speakers this evening. So could I turn firstly to Emma Hamer from the National Farmers Union, Worcestershire County Advisor. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes. Okay.
Do I need anything, or is it? Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and many thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you tonight. I work for the National Farmers Union, and I'm the County Advisor for the NFU for Worcestershire. I represent about 2,000 farms in the county and about 300 in this district. I also have a small beef and arable farm myself, which I run with my husband and my children. So I want to explain how the changes to agricultural property relief and business property relief that were announced in the budget will affect farmers. These announcements mean that farmers and growers would have to pay 20% inheritance tax on farms worth more than £1 million, leaving many fearing they would have to break up their farm in order to find the money to pay this tax bill. So the government's intention was to target wealthy businessmen who use the system to avoid paying tax, but this policy is too crude and it risks ensnaring many family farms, the very farms that the politicians claim to support, A calm assessment is needed around where the real unfairness is being introduced and technical fixes are needed. So I absolutely believe that land should not be a tax haven for the wealthy, but this policy needs to find a way to distinguish between farmers working to provide public goods, food and benefits to the environment and wealthy individuals who are seeking a tax break. Currently, when one generation dies, the farm passes to the next generation. If these proposed tax changes were to be implemented, all this could change. Bereaved children would suddenly be faced with an enormous tax bill, and as incomes from farming are generally low, often below the minimum wage, these children would be unable to pay. Now, we have been told we've got 10 years to pay, but if you're faced with a 300, 400, 500,000 pounds inheritance tax bill, you would then have to pay over 10 years 30, 40 or 50,000 pounds a year. Many farms don't earn that income, especially small family farms, so they would be unable to pay even if the costs were spread over 10 years. So the only way to raise the money to pay the proposed inheritance tax bill is to sell land. This would make farms less viable, smaller, less profitable. But who would buy the land? Other farmers are going to be reluctant to buy the land because that would make their farms worth more money and that would land them with a bigger inheritance tax bill when they died. So reduced profitability is going to inhibit investment. One of Rachel Reeves, one of the Labour Party's plans is to improve growth. They want everything to grow. Well, currently farms are retracting. They daren't invest. The number of order books that are zero at the moment because farmers don't want to buy a tractor, they don't want to invest in more land, they don't want to make their businesses more profitable and bigger because they'll have a greater inheritance tax bill. And when farmers are buying things, they're putting money into the economy. All those tractor dealerships are paying tax. So the intention to increase growth has actually backfired and growth is stifled currently because of this policy. So the NFU has done some analysis of this, and it shows that if you look at the Treasury's figures, you'll find that 75% of farms will fall above this £1 million threshold. So can you see how poorly thought out this policy is? Until the autumn budget, the advice to farmers was that farmland, machinery, livestock and the farmhouse could pass on to the next generation upon death. And this has been overturned overnight, leaving many unable to plan and uncertain. So the result of this ill-considered policy could be a mass exodus from farming. Okay, so once the farms have gone, what's going to happen to the land? Pony paddocks? Housing? Solar panels? But more importantly, where are we to get the food from? In an increasingly unstable world, with global populations forecast to reach 9.5 billion by 2050, we need farmers now more than ever before. I think the biggest concern about this are the people that are discriminated against. It's going to discriminate against the widowed, the elderly, the terminally ill, the accidental deaths, and the children who are too young to decide. I've met with the 2 Labour MPs in Worcestershire, and their advice to us is, well, plan now, hand it over to your children, gift the farm away. Well, how can I leave my farm to my children now? They're too young and they're too inexperienced to take over the farm. And if I do give it to my children, I can't then take any benefit from the farm. I can't take an income and I can no longer live in the farmhouse. And also the income from my farm is so small that there's not enough money being generated by the farm for the different generations to all take an income. So I think my message to you tonight is to do all you can that is in your power as a council to urge the government to look at the evidence. What we're asking for is for them to press pause, to consult, to acknowledge that maybe they've got this wrong, and let's find some other ways to generate much needed income to pay the public, to pay the debt that the 20 million black hole that we are trying to fill, because this policy is a cruel policy which is ill thought out and it is extremely detrimental to farming families within this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for your time. Could I have Oliver next? Oliver Sermon, thank you. Getting Oliver about 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm a fourth generation farmer from Upton-on-Severn, and I'm sure I don't need to rehearse the multifaceted value that farmers, agriculture and the allied industries bring to the UK. They're, if anything, amplified when related to the wonderful, rich and diverse farming communities of the Malvern Hills. But to make it plain, there are hundreds of farmers caring for tens of thousands of hectares, contributing millions of pounds to the local economy, employing hundreds of people in farming, and that's not even taking into account the ancillary industries. Now, on the 29th of October, farmers were facing extreme challenges from almost every conceivable angle, many of which were financial, but also numerous that challenged the very mental well-being and fortitude of farmers. To name a few brightly burning fires: bungled agricultural policy, climate extremes, multiple disease threats, disadvantageous trade deals, and mounting red tape. And then sometime around lunchtime on the 30th of October, Rachel Reeves happened. We're of course talking about the APR and BPR bombshells, but rest assured, and to quote the 903-word government webpage explaining the changes, reforms announced in the budget will help raise money to fix the public finances while protecting small family farms from unfairly high inheritance tax. Going on to say, the government is committed to supporting farmers and rural economies, including helping families to pass their land on to the next generation. Now, is that really the case? Farmers, who are the backbone of the countryside, who were already on their knees and at the end of their tethers, were thrown the most almighty kick in the teeth imaginable by the government, that either doesn't understand or, at worst, doesn't care about farmers. Now, Tom Bradshaw, the president of the NFU, succinctly summed the new policy up when presenting at the EFRA Parliament Select Committee, when he asked if the Chancellor would please tell us the question that this policy is the answer to, because we would be sure that as an industry we could come together and work out a better solution. The complexities and the absurdities of this policy were superbly presented at this committee session, both at an academic and a human level, and I would urge members of the Council to watch the committee, and I'm happy to provide the link. Now, I completely understand it's not a binary conversation that the government wants to impose a tax that farming community don't want to pay. And I think that's the crux of the issue. It is almightily complex. The consequences and the unintended consequences are vast. Communities, families, individuals, and most importantly, people's very mental health, and in some cases lives, are at risk here. A poorly conceived, poorly thought out, poorly consulted policy is in danger of hammering home the final nail in the coffin of our industry and jeopardising forever the countryside, the lungs and the heart and the soul of our country. Simply put, we are calling on the government to pause and consult on its decision on APR and APR. And we base this assertion on 5 simple principles. Farmers don't earn enough money to pay the potential inheritance tax bills. Farmers are diverting money away from strategic capital investments that would otherwise enhance and secure the nation's food security to make an allowance for potential tax bills. There are no options for elderly farmers. Some farmers simply may not live long enough to put their affairs in order in time. The Treasury has more to gain from a thriving rural business, paying other forms of tax and providing jobs than sabotaging it. And the Treasury hasn't asked anyone in agriculture about this policy at all, so it is no wonder it is poorly thought through and based on inaccurate economic analysis of the rural economy. I can assure Council here today, and indeed Government, that there is a very long queue of people who would be only too happy to be consulted, engaged with, and most importantly listened to make improvements to the political and legislative landscape for the future for all of agriculture and everybody involved in this great industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Josephine Parker, thank you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Josephine Parker. I am the 5th generation of my family to farm at Upper Holling Farm, Martley. I farm with my parents and uncle, all of which are over 70. Every generation before me has worked extremely hard to grow our farm to make it economically viable for the next generation. My great-grandfather even went to Canada to work in the lumber camps just to send back a few shillings to pay for the farm. Each generation have ploughed everything into the farm to grow and improve it for the next generation. This has meant that we are, like many across the sector, on paper asset rich, but in reality cash poor. We could simply not afford to pay a tax bill on each death. Inevitably, land would have to be sold, each death making the farm less and less viable until we reached a point that we could simply no longer farm and we'd be forced to sell up and end farming altogether. The very thought of this breaks my heart, but this is not just a sad story for us. This is a disaster for the British public, as this will be the same story to most family farms across the entire country. And when each farm is sold, I am certain these farms will not be purchased by a budding young farmer. They will be purchased by large, non-farming organisations for biodiversity net gain, carbon offset, or similar corporate objectives. This means no food. This is a threat to national food security. Farmers are the custodians and stewards of the land, and without them, the farming landscape we all know and love will be lost. Other businesses will be significantly impacted: agronomists, machinery dealers, feed merchants, livestock markets. The list is endless. This is not just a debate of numbers, this is a debate of livelihoods lost, landscape lost, and food lost. There is not enough affordable food in this country, and this is now only going to get worse. We farm because it's a way of life, because it is a knowledge and a love of the land that has been passed down from generation to generation, and because, well, quite simply, people need to eat. Myself and my husband wanted to work to improve the farm like the generations before us, to give our two young sons an opportunity, but I believe this opportunity could now be gone. Alongside working on my family farm, I was a rural land agent for over 10 years. In those years, I have sat around many farmhouse kitchen tables, talking to farmers and learning all about their businesses. I am certain that the proposed changes to the tax rules will impact the majority of them and put many out of business. This is a very different outlook to the statistics that Labour have published about the number of farms that will be affected. Our industry experts have proved these figures are simply wrong, and we need to listen to them. We need to act now, reverse the family farm tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Caroline Withington, thank you.
No. Thank you. I understand how difficult active travel and road safety issues are in Malvern, a Victorian town on a hill not designed for current traffic and population. Traffic causes such major road safety issues: pollution, environmental damage. Pedestrians and cyclists don't. Malvern is a unique place to live. New young families are showing they enjoy walking and cycling to school, shops and activities. Can we promote this? 35,000 population, tourism and business is growing. We have no proper dedicated pedestrian areas, perhaps pedestrianised Church Street. Edith Walk is extremely dangerous. Traffic is increasing. What a welcome for 3.5 million visitors. People spend more time and money in pedestrianised areas. Cars like flying fortresses are twice the size and weight of past family vehicles and much faster. Tyres and brake discs are huge and fill our atmosphere with carcinogenic tyre and brake dust, let alone any engine emissions. 20 miles per hour and pedestrianisation is a worldwide movement and an accepted speed in many towns and cities in England and other countries. Wales has, in 12 months, had a reduction of 28% road traffic incidents, 498 fewer people hurt because of their 20 mile per hour policy. Everyone is safer, everyone wins. Impact is generally survivable at 20. Noise pollution is significantly lower. HGVs, many thrashing their way through our residential streets and town centre. Why? Where are they from and where are they going? What is the multimodal freight policy for? I'm happy to help. I'll write to some of these companies. Road traffic incidents are more and more regular. Monday, a van was left on Wells Road with the front smashed, blocking the pavement, so it had been there for at least 2 days. If we're serious about active travel, we have hundreds of young families moving in. Where are Section 106 monies and 20 million for the theatre? VASs are everywhere and communities have put in their own signs to manage speeds. Newspaper articles feature those who want safety measures around Malvern. The message is that people want slower, safer, less traffic and pedestrian support measures. Slower means calm flow, less carcinogens, less noise, less road rage and more efficient travel. Improved signage for our car parks, Como Road. In Cornwall and many other places, they have simply put 20-mile-per-hour metal signs. They haven't spent a fortune. In London and Manchester, they have painted big zebra crossings. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. The crash map shows we have had many RTIs, serious collisions and fatalities. Court Road is an example. Seriously impacted by developments in the last 5 years, has had serious collisions and many shocking, but thankfully less serious. It's a residential road, virtually single file, and is part and unprotected. It is part of a national cycle route, 46. 178 residents signed a petition and presented to Worcester County Council asking for help with rat running and particularly HGVs, some 44 tonnes, cutting up Court Road, driving over and damaging our feature in Barnard's Green. The pavement was repaired in 2021 and it needs repairing again now. They cause dangerous illegal pavement driving, major noise, vibration and pollution. We have a black and white cottage with 56 centimetres clearance. Court Road is a natural walking, cycling route to shops, 5 schools, Great Malvern Station and Malvern. Are we too accepting of traffic and bullying traffic? The police are supportive, but 30 miles per hour is too fast. Speeding is illegal, pavement driving is illegal, and pavement parking is antisocial behaviour. There is money, it is how it's distributed. What price safety and a healthier environment? There is no reason not to support it. Can the council be brave and visionary about road safety, active travel and the environment in Malvern?
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you very
Phil.
much.
Can I just say again, thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you for coming this evening and for expressing your thoughts. That's fantastic. Thank you. Can I move on to agenda item 6, leaders' question time? And we have our first question from Councillor Martin Allen. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Council, and Happy New Year. In April 2022, Malvern Hills District Council produced a town centre plan for Upton. In the key projects and outcomes section, one of the objectives was for the pedestrianisation of Lower High Street and Waterside. I, as the County Councillor, working with Upton Town Council, Malvern Hills District Council and the County Council, initiated an 18-month trial closure of traffic to part of the Waterside from Bridge House to the Swan Pub. Upton Town Council have now decided they would like a permanent pedestrian zone in this location, with continued access for the 2 residents and also for businesses, plus emergency services. For this part of Waterside to be turned into a permanent pedestrian zone, there is an urgent need now for Malvern Hills District Council to grasp the initiative and talk to the County Council, the Town Council and myself about a way forward and come up with a redesign of the road, be it ANPR cameras and signage or something else. I know that Mrs Nelson instructed Malvern Hills District Council to have plans drawn up for a road redesign of both Church Street and Edith Walk by Jacobs. Will Malvern Hills District Council demonstrate its commitment to Upton and contact Jacobs and have plans drawn up? Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. John, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Allen, for highlighting the progress and aspirations surrounding the pedestrianisation of Waterside in Upton. The 2022 Town Centre Plan did indeed identify the potential for enhancing the pedestrian experience in key areas, including Lower High Street and Waterside. It is encouraging to see the momentum gained through the trial closure and the support of Upton Town Council for establishing a permanent pedestrian zone in this location. Officers understand from Worcester County Council colleagues that as part of the experimental TRO there is a requirement to consider public feedback prior to making the prohibition of traffic permanent. We believe that there have been some comments and suggestions received from local residents, but the County Council have now indicated their support for making the order permanent. The current management arrangement with the bollard would continue should this be the case. Malvern Hills District Council fully recognises the importance of the initiative in supporting Upton's vitality and enhancing the visitor and resident experience. However, it is important to recognise that the town plan identified Worcester County Council as the lead for this project, and on that basis, Malvern Hills District Councillors would be happy to engage with Worcester County Council and Upton Town Council to discuss the feasibility of creating a permanent pedestrian zone, ensuring that access for residents, businesses and emergency services is effectively managed. As far as funding is concerned, whilst we may be prepared to consider a contribution to the County Council's costs for designing the scheme, the capital costs for the project will need to be funded by a party other than the District Council. As you have noted, Malvern Hills District Council has previously worked with Jacobs on two public realm projects for Church Street and Edith Walk. Concept designs were commissioned via Jacobs as they are identified not only within the Great Malvern Town Plan, but are also identified as a named priority scheme in the current 5-year plan. So, in conclusion, I am committed to ensuring Malvern Hills District Council demonstrates its support for Upton's long-term vision, and I welcome our involvement in discussions with the ward members, Upton Town Council and Worcester County Council about the most appropriate way forward for this scheme. But I see Worcester County Council leading this scheme rather than us.
Thank you, John. Martin, secondary question.
Yes, thank you. Slightly confused as it is our town centre plan that Malvern Hills District Council actually produced. And I feel, as we all know, the perilous state of the finances down to the mismanagement of the current administration at County Hall, that really, as the District Council does have some reserves, which possibly it intends to spend quite a lot of it before it disappears, I would ask you to reconsider that in fact the District Council now step forward and do the right thing by Upton and take over leadership of at least arranging some designs drawn up.
Would you like to respond, John?
I think we will carry on having the discussions with Worcester County Council to see how we can actually bring this project to the fore and get it started. So I think that's all I would be able to commit to at the moment. Until we have those discussions, I think it's premature to make any other decisions.
Thank you, John. We have a second question from Councillor Natalie McVeigh.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for acknowledging my LGA award and to fellow councillors for the round of applause. It's very welcome. So my question is rather brief. Has the leader publicly expressed the view of this council in relation to devolution? Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Response, John?
Yeah, I wonder if I get some clarification, Natalie, about whether you mean devolution or whether you mean local government reform, or whether you mean both, because I'm assuming nothing. I just wanted some clarification on that.
Natalie?
Fine, to clarify that, I'm using the government's term, which is devolution. Others may call it something different, but I don't think it really matters. It's just semantics. It's the same thing. Thank you.
John?
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Councillor McVeigh, for your question on devolution. I've said publicly on BBC Midlands Today, BBC Hereford and Worcester News that we face the biggest challenge in local government since the reforms of the Heath government, and that we need to consider all the options open to us. So I've said that in that open forum. We now await responses, however, from Jim McMahon, the Minister of State, on whether he accepts the request from Worcester County Council for postponement of the County Council elections in May 25. And also we await the Minister who will respond to our instruction, who will also informally invite proposals from all councils in two-tier areas and small neighbouring unitary councils in January 25, where he will set out more detail on the criteria he will consider when taking decisions on the proposals submitted to government.
Thank you, John. Natalie, second question?
Yes, please. It's not quite the answer I was looking for. There's a lot of detail in there that's not actually relevant to the question, which could have been answered with a simple yes or no. So I'll interpret it as a no, seeing as you're saying you didn't mention the views of this council. So that being the case, please can you explain how the MJ, the BBC and other publications have published quotes from you stating that Malvern Hills favours a north-south divide rather than a one Worcestershire? I could quote from any of the above sources, but I will save the leader any further embarrassment. Thank you.
John, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I made it fairly clear on both to the leaders group meetings and in other places that I've kept keeping an open view on the way forward, as many options as possible that we can consider rather than being fixated on one outcome.
Thank you, John. Moving us forward to agenda item 7, the pay policy statement. Can I invite Councillor John Gallagher to move the recommendations in the report? Thank you.
Okay, this is the statement on pay policy, and we're going to review it, and it's for recommendation for approval by Council. So a few brief comments. The Chief Officer's pay is determined by a national agreement, and the system of grading follows the Hay evaluation methodology. Pay scales in progress is subject to annual performance appraisal. There are no performance-related bonus elements to pay, and the mileage and subsistence are all nationally determined. All other levels are subject to National Joint Council scales, so no staff are paid lower than Pay Scale 3, and the pay scales are shown in Appendix A, so if you want to have a look at those, you will see them there. Finally, all staff are supported in local government pension scheme by the employer contribution, which is 17.6%, the same figure that was in last year's pay policy statement, 17.6% local government pension scheme. The recommendation here is I propose that the Council approve this.
Thank you, John. Can I get a seconder to that? Thank you. Councillor Owenson. Do you have any questions to this particular agenda item? No. Okay. Can we invite members to take a vote then, please? Thank you.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. That was unanimous. Moving on to agenda item 8, Local Development Scheme 2024 to 26 review. Could I invite Councillor David Harrison to move the recommendations in this report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations on your walk and a Happy New Year to anybody I haven't seen. Agenda item 7, this is the Local Development Scheme. Sorry, 8, my fault, sorry. what have you. Rebecca Buckley, who's at the back, will lead on this and try and answer a lot of the questions if you have any. This is something that we have to do to submit alongside our SWDPR, which has been already submitted. It's just the sort of timescale really of everything else that has to be sort of put in. So I'll invite Rebecca and anybody who has any questions.
No, do we have a? You've got a question. So firstly, can I just get a seconder on it, David? Before we, is that okay? Yeah. Are you? What are you actually moving in terms of the recommendation of the report? Can you just cover that for us firstly?
The recommendations in paragraph 2, 2.1, 2.2.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dean. And can we now open that up to debate? Jules, question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to repeat really what I said at Executive, and some of you were there, that this local development scheme, which is required to be reviewed every few years, is a very important piece of work. It doesn't feel like it, but it's a key part of what the inspectors will be discussing and considering at the EIP in March, examination in public. Our officers have worked beyond the call of duty, particularly the planning policy team, to get us to where we are with the South Worcestershire Development Plan Review. If you'd have asked me in December last year whether we were going to get to inquiry in March, I would have said no. One of the real reasons why we've got there is because we appointed Ian MacLeod as director, and I have to say that Ian has gone, really, as soon as he stepped into the post, has really worked so hard with the County Council and National Highways, who without their support we wouldn't be where we are today, and we wouldn't be going to an examination in public. I suspect the plan would have been found unsound. So I'd like to reiterate what I said at Exec, which is that I really want to thank the staff, and I'm very grateful that we've got that in the recommendation now, because staff don't very often get thanked, and I mean, to be working beyond hours over Christmas was fantastic, and they're still working hard now. This isn't the end of it. They'll be running around like crazy during the examination in public, trying to answer all the questions that the barristers throw up, etc. So it's a stressful time for staff, but I just want to say thank you for including that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. Come back to David.
Yeah, thank you. I did say recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. 2.3 was over the page on mine, and I would definitely like to include that. And I'm sure Dean will second those.
Thank you. I'll just confirm that with Dean. Is that okay to second? Thank you, Dean. Do you have any more questions, comments, Sarah, first? Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, it's just a comment, and obviously backing up, thanks to all the officers for all their hard work. But I do remember whenever this council first got elected, because I've got a terrible memory now, and we started on this process, me asking several times why we didn't have the transport strategy and where that was. And every time I was told, shut up and go away, Sarah, you're making a fuss. And then when the first time we went to the inspector, they came back and said, where's the transport strategy? And it's just that sometimes, you know, if you're asking a question, it might be good to listen to the person who said, where's the transport strategy 2 years earlier? And also, it's quite disappointing that we've put this plan in, and I've now read what they've said about Rushwick, and that the transport strategy says we probably can't afford the infrastructure when we build it. And there's no funding there for the train station, which is a critical part of the SWDPR. So it's great that we've got to this point where we're looking at a plan, but it's got some fairly big holes in it. And if I was living in the Rushwick area, and we're quite close, I'd be really quite worried about what it's going to do to the transport in that area when we can't afford to put the roads in to cope with the traffic it's going to generate. So those were just my comments.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to come to Martin first, and I've also got Paul and Douglas following that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to thank the officers, and I'd also like to thank Councillor Harrison, who has worked tirelessly on this, and I think people perhaps don't realise the amount of time he does put into his role as a portfolio holder. It does worry me that people forget that we went through COVID while this process has been going on, and I fear that people tend to overlook that and not understand the reason why it has taken so long, or they gloss over it for party political reasons. And we carried on with it during COVID, and I think we should be very pleased as a council that we've got to this point. Obviously, what the new government's going to do, once, assuming we get this approved, they may just throw it in the bin. We have to hope they don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Paul Bennett.
Hello, hi. Do we have any indication as to what the possible threat of devolution to this plan is? Because some of us are quite worried that if the wrong option is chosen, obviously with different boundaries to what all of this hard work has gone through to pull together, then we will be asked to start again. Is that any risk at all?
David, can I come to you with that? Or should I take that straight to Ian, David? Is that...
I'm going to defer that to Ian. I'm sorry about that, but...
Ian, Rebecca, is that okay?
Can't get the mic.
Oh, you're on.
I'm on. Thank you. So, assuming the plan is adopted, that will obviously be the statutory plan, which will remain in place. We have a period then where we'll have to go into an immediate review of the plan anyway. Obviously, you'll be aware of previous reports we've taken here on the MPPF and the new housing figures, which will trigger an immediate review. So we'll need to begin working on that. The advantage which obviously the authorities, Malvern, Wychavon and Worcester City would have is that we would have an adopted plan in place, which will mean we'll have a 5-year housing land supply, and we'll be able to demonstrate that until such a time as devolution change the boundaries. But the preparation would need to begin on a review in any case. So, but as I said, having a 5-year housing land supply would be the critical bit in that short-term period.
Thank you, Ian. Douglas?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I reiterate some of the things that have already been said, particularly Sarah and the halt at Rushwick. We promised this long time ago, and we've been badgering on about it, and actually it's not going to happen. It's very disappointing, especially when the railway infrastructure there is capable of doing it, but we can't process or get together the finances and the land and the appropriate bodies to put that in place for further development. So that is well made. My concern is on the CIL levy, which, as I understand it, is split Malvern into a north and south, which I believe is inappropriate. It is favouring the developer for the northern area against the southern area, and surely Malvern Hills should be treated as one for infrastructure levy. The demands for support from the community that this levy produces is equal in the north and the south, and should be treated on an equal basis. It does concern me, and I'm hoping that that will be part of the review. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. David?
Thank you. A good question. Thank you very much. I'll take it in two parts. First, the land. The land has been secured, and you will also know that a planning, I think it's scoping application has been put in, which is already a live application to determine that the land is there and what it's there for. As far as the SIL is concerned, this has been submitted at present via the SWDP, which isn't anything to do with this particular item, but just to update you, it's been submitted and probably it will be discussed by the two inspectors, and it'll be up to them to make a decision. But I'll just pass over to the experts down there, see if I'm right and wrong.
So just to assure you that SIL is a separate process, so there will be, you've raised a point with me previously, so we will be taking a report back to the council in due course to update you on the SIL charging schedule. We've undertaken consultation, it will be then obviously submitted for examination going forward. But our north-south split is something that we will take a report back to council in due course before it's submitted for examination. But it's a completely separate examination to the SWDPR.
Thank you, everyone. I've not seen any other hands, so should we take this to the vote? Oh, so we did have a second. We had Dean. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to stay with you, David, for agenda item 9, contaminated land inspection strategy. Could I invite you to move the recommendation in that report?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The recommendation is on page, not certain what it is, but number 2, one recommendation recommending the council adopts the revised strategy as attached at appendix, which will be published on the Worcester Regulatory Service website. Just to advise that, sorry, got to use my notes, I can't do it offhand. Within the Worcester Regulatory Service area, I believe there's 9,300 sites within the Worcestershire boundary, but that obviously is more than just Malvern Hills, but there are 1,340 within the Malvern Hills district. And we do have 2 gentlemen here from Worcester Regulatory Services who've come down to answer any questions that you have and would like to put forward. But I'd like to propose that item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Could you get a seconder to that proposal? Thank you, Beverly. And do we have any questions on this particular? Natalie, thank you.
Just a comment, really, please, Chair. At Executive Committee, I did raise attention to the fact that we hadn't had an impact assessment screening response as part of those papers, so I'm pleased to see them included in this pack for tonight's meeting. Thank you to officers and to David for including those.
Thank you, Natalie. Paul?
I just wanted to draw attention to one aspect of this on the policy. There is a section showing the characteristics of the Malvern Hills district, where it details the question of Malvern, Tenbury Wells and Upton. No mention of a number of rural areas, unless you call them other villages, where they have problems as well as an interesting history. So please, when we do similar things in future, can we bear in mind that the Baldwin Moor does exist in the northeast of the district? We're not just a recipient of house building and providers of sill, and dealing with all the area's traffic to get across the river. So perhaps that could be considered in any future strategy where we outline the detail of the district.
Thank you, Paul. Some important points there. Any other questions or comments before we go to the vote? Okay, thank you.
Can I just thank the
David,
officers coming down from Worcester Regulatory Services, 2 of them there, willing to answer the questions, and they haven't had any. Thank you for coming down.
Yeah, thank you. Let's take this to the vote. Thanks.
Unanimous.
Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay. I believe, David, I'm staying with you for agenda item 10.
Probably.
My apologies. The Gambling Act 2005 review, the review of statement of principles, considerations of consultation responses. And I believe we had a lot of consultation responses, didn't we, David?
I don't know, is Niall at the back? No, not today. I'm not really surprised. He came all the way down for the executive meeting. We do have the recommendations at section 2, just to approve this particular item. We have, or Worcester Regulatory Services had 2 responses, I believe, for the whole of this consultation round the whole of the sort of Worcestershire area, one of which I believe was in Malvern, and stated that there was a problem with gambling. Well, it's not really rocket science. I think we know that there is, but of course you can't just deal with problem with gambling. It's how it's sort of dealt with. I don't really think there's much else to sort of discuss here. If anybody does have any questions, I will try and answer them, but I am not an expert.
Thank you, David. Do you have a seconder to this particular report? Thank you, Dean. Thank you. With that, do we have any questions for David? Dean?
Can I just say, I think this is just a tidying up. It's something that has been put forward, I think, every 3 years. And it's very much based on national policy. And we're very fortunate we have Niall. He must be one of the most experienced leaders, I think, on licensing in the country by now. I've certainly had great confidence in him over the years, and I think we can all have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. So reasonably straightforward. Can we take this to the vote then? Thank you.
Yes, that's you now.
Thank you. Okay, on to agenda item 11. This is to do with appointments, and this is, I believe, to do with the fact that we have somebody who needs to move a position, and we're filling in a position that previously wasn't filled in at the previous one. But I'm going to hand over to John to cover all this off. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first element of this is the Southern Area Planning Committee member of the Joint Advisory Panel. And we've got, I'd like to actually propose we need to put a Southern Area Planning Committee member on it, and that vacancy exists at the moment. So I'd like to propose Beverly Nielsen to take on that position.
Thank you. I think we'll take these ones in turn, actually. So yeah, so Beverly Nielsen. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Jeremy. And can we take that to the vote? Is it anybody else? Sorry, is anybody else? Sorry, there is.
Any other?
Is anybody? Sorry,
Yeah.
Jules, I'll come to you.
That's all right. No, I'm very quiet usually. I'd like to propose Councillor John Rain, if I may, because John's been on JAP previously, and also he's our heritage champion, so he has a lot of knowledge in this area. So that would be my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Natalie. We've got two proposals. Do you have any more? Okay. Shall I take it? We just take a vote on the first one? Okay. Can see all in favour of Beverly Nielsen,
Okay, so that's 17-4.
Thank you, everybody. And the second position, John?
Well, actually, if I could stay with the JAP, we had what was intended to be Paul Cumming and Barbara Jones-Williams is the name that's currently down on JAP. So I'd like to propose that Paul Cumming swaps with Beverly Jones-Williams as the...
Okay, so you're proposing a change of, can you just confirm that again, sorry?
Yeah,
What you're
it's
proposing.
to change the Beverly Jones Williams position.
Barbara.
Barbara Jones Williams.
1 second, everybody, but 1 second, it's okay. I'm just going to turn to Misha.
So John, that's not on the agenda. So you add in an extra recommendation? Are you?
Yes.
I am.
Okay. Does that find a seconder?
Thank you.
So.
David, if you want to speak to that, thank you.
Yes, on the JAP, there is usually myself as portfolio holder, and then the chair of Northern Area and the chair of Southern Area, and then another member for North and another member for South. We've just appointed the Southern Area member. It was recommended that Councillor Paul Cummins would become the Northern Area member, but unfortunately it didn't get through at the time. We still have to have a Northern Area member on there, but the interesting thing is that although I would prefer that we do make this official, we don't have to, so if it gets refused it doesn't matter too much, but because it has to obviously be somebody from Northern, and you can always have on the JAP substitutes.
Okay, Natalie, I want to come to you.
Point of clarification, please. I don't understand the comment that it didn't go through last time in relation to the Northern Area nomination for JAP. I thought we had voted on that issue.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, there was a vote last time, and the proposals were put forward for Barbara for that. So that was the vote that was carried. So John has now asked to make an extra recommendation that Barbara's place be swapped with Paul. That's been seconded by Councillor Owenson. So I'm going to take a vote for everybody who is in favour of that proposal. And those against? And those abstaining? Okay, that vote is carried.
Thank you, John. I'm going to come back to you again. So this is for Vice Chair of Environment Policy Development Panel, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Environment PDP is without a Vice Chair at the moment, so we need to put a name forward for that, and I proposed Barbara Jones-Williams this time rather than Beverly Jones-Williams. So, yeah, Barbara Jones-Williams for the Vice Chair of the Environment Policy Panel.
Thank you. Is that found a seconder? Thank you, Jeremy. Do you have any other names? So this is for the Vice Chair of the Environment PDP. Do you have any other names? No. Okay, turn to the vote. Thank you. On to agenda item 12, and David, I'm coming back to you. This is for the Article 4.1, direction and discontinuance notice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very strange item that's brought forward. This relates to a section of land that was granted planning permission both at our committees and also at appeal to be a community orchard. Subsequently, this has been passed back to the developers and the original owners, as far as I'm aware. And what has happened is that this land has been sold off as individual plots. Now, this is causing lots of problems because it's, as I say, it was designated for the lifetime of the development to be a community orchard. I'm not really going to go into this in too much detail. I'm going to pass this over to Simon Jones and Ian MacLeod, who are at the back, because they have been dealing with this, particularly Simon, for more years than I'd like to remember since this first came forward. And I'm sure that they will be able to explain the reasoning behind this. And you have in the documents, you have the various plans, and Appendix 2 is the most important to look at.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. So just provide a bit of background. The Article 4 direction effectively revokes permitted development rights. So in this case, we're removing the permitted development rights to erect fencing on the land, which, as Councillor Harrison accurately said there, was meant to be retained as open land for the lifetime of this development. So we're seeking authority for you to remove those PD rights. There'll be a consultation process on that, but we're aiming to remove those rights as quickly as possible to stop further fencing being erected.
Thank you. So we've got Councillor David Harrison moving that recommendation. Do we get a seconder to that? Thank you, Jules. Do we have any questions or comments to this? Paul?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that it is good that we are doing things like this, because people feel at the moment they can get away with things. And if we stop things like this, it will set an example for other contentious areas where people are taking the mickey.
Thank you, Paul. Any other comments or thoughts before we move to a vote? John?
Thank you. Yeah, this has been an issue that's been boiling up for several years now. This land is actually designated as part of the significant gap, and it should be protected as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments. Anything else? Now let's take this to the vote then. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, Mr. Chairman, that this is recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 and 2.6.
Thank you.
All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Agenda item 13 is a forward plan for noting only, which brings us to the final agenda point, 14, notice of motion. And I believe we have, I'm going to be inviting Councillor Martin Allen to move a notice of motion.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening again, Council. The motion, Farmers Inheritance Tax. The motion is, this Council requests that the Chairman send to His Majesty's Labour Government this Council's heartfelt concerns about the changes to Farmers Inheritance Tax to farms within the Malvern Hills District. Too many farms will be lost. Generations of love, care and hard work will be destroyed with this unjust level of taxation. By writing this letter, this Council calls upon the Labour Government to revisit their decision and adjust the threshold upwards so that those farms with a value of less than £5 million are excluded from this disastrous blunder. Also, that Malvern Hills District Council continue to fund the rural community builder who is developing vital connections and developing support to our rural residents. As we've heard tonight by our excellent speakers, simply put, the threshold has been set far too low. And in fact, £2 or £3 million threshold would be far too low. I can't believe that anybody would think it would be too high. Too many farms will be lost. And as I've said, generations of love, care and hard work will be destroyed with this unjust level of taxation. The threshold should be moved upwards, thus saving so many farms from this evil change. The NFU's economic analysis shows that if you take the Treasury's own analysis, remove claims that they were for fields, not farms, then adjust for inflation and the fact that farms are subject to Business Property Relief, BPR, also as well as annual percentage rate, APR, you will find in fact that 75%, not 27% of farms fall above the new £1 million threshold. What you may not know is Worcestershire has 2,060 farms spread over more than 120,000 hectares. These generate £174 million for the economy, with 5,700 jobs on farm. The total income for farming is £68 million. It's not a small sum, is it? DEFRA's own figures show that 66% of farms have a net value of over £1 million. If you take an illustrative price of around £10,000 per hectare, which is reasonable around here, DEFRA statistics would show that 40% of farms in England are over 50 hectares, and these would fall well above the £1 million threshold on bare land alone. We're not even talking about sheep, cattle or machinery. So as I said, we don't need to look at any other assets just to get over this £1 million mark. They will already be sunk. This then accounts for 89% of farmland. When you make a promise to farmers, you should keep it. Farmers are incredibly let down by the changes to APR and BPR announced in the budget. Let's be clear, the changes outlined in IHT reliefs will snatch away much of the next generation's ability to carry on producing British food. How can they plan for the future? How can they plan to deliver for the environment and generate clean energy, all of which are apparently key priorities for the government? What some of you might not know, in the County Council a few weeks ago, I supported the Conservative motion, which was almost identical to this with a few changes. And I didn't play party politics with it, even though it was a Conservative motion. I believed in what they were saying and I was prepared to vote for it. I do think there should be a limit. I don't think that people like Jeremy C. Clarkson should be able to escape all the tax that's due. He has been said publicly that he bought farmland to escape inheritance tax. So I hope that all councillors here will support this motion, and if there is an amendment, if it's a sensible amendment, I'm quite prepared to accept it, though I'll be disappointed that if anybody produces an amendment, they didn't in fact come and talk to me about it first, because there has been more than one promise from various members of this council that they want to work with everybody inclusively. So anyway, I hope you will support the farmers. I hope you support the people who came here tonight, and I reserve the right to sum up at the end of the debate, and I may be asking for a name vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Do we have a seconder, Malcolm?
Sorry. Good evening, Council. I'd like to formally second this motion and reserve my right to speak at the end. Thank you.
Okay. Because the motion refers to financial implications, we're going to refer this motion straight to Executive Committee, so there will be no debate. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Malcolm.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Yes. This does not affect Malvern Hills finances at all.
It does as a recommendation, so that's what I'm doing, referring the motion straight to Executive Committee. There'll be no debate.
Disgusting.
Thank you. Let's close the meeting with that.
Just to clarify...
It will be discussed at Executive Committee.
Tom. I intended to speak tonight.
That's all right, Tom.
In order to help proceedings, there are two aspects of Martin's motion, as I recall. The second item is clearly a financial issue, and I totally understand the reasoning behind that element. However, if the member were to withdraw the second element relating to spending and retain the first element, then maybe you could allow it to be debated tonight.
I'm very happy to accept Councillor Wells's advice.
Just give me 1 second, just to work through it and make sure that there is no other implications. I think in fairness, an important element of this, and I'm not trying to get around it, but I think an important element of it, and you are finished on that line, particularly because you're looking at the support the Malvern Hills District Council can give. I think, as you expect, you know, this is a government thing that we can voice our concerns around, but what can we actually do to support local people? And in regards to that, I think that last line is really, really important. And I will hold with the fact that I think that this as a motion is important, but it should go to exec, be discussed, and then potentially can go to wherever exec send it for it to be discussed and thing. There are potential finances to support this, aren't there? So I think from that point of view, I think it's important.
Chairman, sorry to crave your indulgence here.
That's
but
okay, Tom, I will do.
But the mover of the motion has withdrawn the element that was the sticking point. And surely, in the spirit of openness and transparency and the whole purpose of attending this evening, you might allow him at least, therefore, to withdraw the bit that's contentious and allow a debate on the stuff that isn't. And by contentious, I define it as being revenue-based. So, Chairman, unless you can persuade me there's an element in the first section that relates to our budget, I do not understand your ruling, and perhaps would encourage you to ask Misha what she thinks.
So in terms of what's put in front of us without that last line, that's essentially the motion that was discussed at the last council meeting, which we did conclude, and there was a conclusion to that. There was a vote on it. So I don't see the point of going through the same discussion.
No, there wasn't. That was on pensioners. This is on farmers. Can we at least put this to a vote, whether or not we can discuss it tonight?
No, it's to my discretion. So I think with that, I'm going to put this to exec and close it. Well, the rules were put in place, Tom, when you were leader. If I can be respectful. Well, there will be a debate. The debate will be at exec. That's what a council's here for. Thank you, everybody. Well, that's fine, because there will be a debate, and it can actually be effective then, Martin. I think that's the issue here, that we can't discuss financial things here. That's okay. I'm going to close the meeting there. Thank you.